Before we turn to Palestine, I'm curious about two things that we don't hear a lot about. One is the anti-Semitism of Zionism, and then the anti-Zionism among Jews.
These are great topics because I really think it gets at the core of how it came to be that Jews in Eastern and Western Europe embraced this ideology called Zionism, right? It was because of anti-Semitism. So even when you talk about where Zionism came from, what are the origins? The first thing you have to do is talk about anti-Semitism. So they're kind of two sides of the same coin. And this is why many of the earliest Zionists, Theodor Herzl, Max Nordau, Arthur Rupin, right, Zev Jabotinsky, they internalized many of the anti-Semitic beliefs circulating about Jews at the time, right? You have Theodor Herzl. People don't realize this. They like to quote from The Jewish State. That's his most famous book. But he wrote another pamphlet, right? He was a prolific journalist and writer and author. He wrote another pamphlet, and it was called Maschel. And excuse me my German pronunciation, but the best translation for that word, and again, I don't know if we're going to get banned here, but the English word, the best English translation for that word is kike. Okay. And the first sentence of the pamphlet, it's like a 15-page pamphlet. The first sentence is, if you oppose Zionism, you are a Maschel. Yeah, because for him, the Jews who wanted to live in exile, who he saw as weak, who he saw as accepting political subjugation, right? Accepting their status as oppressed peoples, that they were weak and that was a problem. They were miserable for having those weak beliefs. They were, they had mocking grins, and they were, basically he's very, it's an anti-Semitic text. In fact, one scholar has described the text as basically an anti-Semite's dream, quote unquote. That's an academic describing the text. Okay. And I think the reason is obvious, is the people who embrace Zionism, the Jews who embrace Zionism, were the Jews who internalized the anti-Semitic beliefs circulating about them. They accepted these beliefs. They said, oh my God, the anti-Semites are correct. We are weak. We don't have control over our own destiny. And he's not the only one. Max Nordau, by the way, who was also, who was kind of Herzl's secondhand man. Right, he was also helped organize the first Zionist Congress in Basel in 1897. So his works, he was he was a best-selling author in the 1880s. His works are replete with anti-Semitic portrayals of the Jew. Okay, the Jew is being circumscribed and diseased. That the Jew has inherently different abilities than the non-Jews. The Jews excel at politics because of their shrewdness. Right, all these kind of very anti-Semitic beliefs that if I said them today on Twitter, I would be canceled instantly. Okay. Arthur Rupin was the head of the Zionist office in Palestine. He was kind of the Ben Gurion before Ben Gurion was. We're talking 1910s. Okay. He rejected Jewish immigrants from places like Ethiopia because he believed that Ethiopian Jews didn't have a real blood connection to the Eastern European Jews, and therefore they were racially impure and they would taint Jewish blood. This was the head of the political office in Palestine saying this. Okay. So deeply, deeply anti-Semitic beliefs. In his case, actually, I would just describe it more as racist beliefs. Right. But he was racist and white supremacist.
Yeah.
And then you had Zev Jabotinsky. Basically, he was the revisionist Zionist, right? So he had an even more vile attitude towards the Jews, who concealed their identity and they were trodden upon. They were easily frightened. They accepted submission, right? All of these stereotypes, he embraced them all. And that's why he went all in on Zionism. So these are not random Zionists, by the way. As we said, these are the most important Zionists of the era. And they harbored anti-Semitic beliefs. They said things in their writings and in their speeches that if I said today, I would be canceled instantly.
The non-Jewish Zionist anti-Semites, like Balfour.
This is, I think like, the Zionist anti-Semites, I think that you can make counter arguments, right? That, okay, maybe they believe these things, but they think they thought they were changeable, solvable problems. Okay. So, but the anti-Semitic non-Jews, right? They did not believe these things could be changed by reformulating the Jew, by creating this new Jew, this muscular Jew. No. their solution to anti-Semitism aligned very much with the Zionist solution to anti-Semitism, which was, send the Jews to Europe, to Palestine, get all these filthy Jews out of Europe, and let them establish a state in Palestine. Wow, that solves our problem, and it solves their problem. It's like win-win. In fact, I mean, people don't realize this, but we're not talking about a pastor here and there. We're talking about important politicians. Okay, so you have Kaiser Wilhelm II. Okay, so he is the German emperor in the late 19th century. So he is emperor of one of the most powerful European states, maybe second or third. He said the most anti-Semitic things you could possibly imagine. I mean, this guy is really like the who's who of anti-Semites. He's like top 5. He visits Palestine in 1898, and part of this goal to help establish a Jewish state in Palestine, he declares his support for Zionism because he believes the Jews who killed our Savior, quote unquote, right? He's still of this kind of more religious anti-Semitism of view, but basically, in order to the Jews have been exploiting Christians in Europe for centuries, right? That's his belief. So wouldn't it be great if we got them all out of Europe? He also, by the way, believes that Jews are very powerful, right? They're the financiers, Jewish capital. And wouldn't it be great if the German Empire is the one perceived to be supporting the establishment of the Jewish state? Because then kind of we're the protector of Zionism. That's going to have all these benefits for us. And that's his view at the time. And of course, that is, by the way, the same thing that Arthur Balfour believes with the Balfour Declaration during World War I, when the Brits have this belief that if they pass the Balfour Declaration, that's going to rile up all these American Zionists, American Jews, to push their government to enter the war effort on the side of the Allied powers, out of this anti-Semitic belief that Jews control the world and American Jews have the ability to like bring the United States into World War I. And then that is kind of the immediate context for the issuance of the Balfour Declaration in 1917. So there's a long, deep history. You're talking like dozens and dozens of anti-Semitic Christian pastors and politicians. We haven't even talked about the Hungarian politician Istotsky, who in 1878, okay, he gives a speech in the Hungarian parliament calling for the establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine. So many of these guys actually predated most of 1878. There's Zionism doesn't really exist. Okay, there is no Zionist movement in 1878. Okay, and yet you have these Hungarian anti-Semitic politicians who are calling for a Jewish state in Palestine, and then he becomes a spokesperson for the anti-Semitic movement in Hungary in the 1880s and 1890s. And actually and there's all these pogroms against Jews in Hungary. He's directly responsible for killing Jews.